And we got hold of Pastor Don's father. Somebody gave me his name in Johannesburg, and I called him, and he came to make sure that Jean got to a church. And so we have had a long relationship and contact with the church. I came from a dysfunctional background. My father abandoned me at birth. He didn't stay long enough to give me a name. My mother left me when I was 9 years old. And by the time I became a teenager, I was very badly damaged, filled with anger, bitterness, and hatred. And if you hate the world, you think the world suffers. The world does not suffer. You're the only one who suffers. And when I turned 21, I no longer wanted to live. Ask God, like Job. Why did my mother, Job said, why did my mother not shut her knees when I was born, that I may be suffocated to death? And I met that girl, Jean. She must have been pretty desperate. And she gave me Gideon's New Testament, which I read from cover to cover and cover to cover until it literally fell to pieces in my hands. I still don't know where the books are found, and I still don't know where the verses are found. But I know it's there. I've registered them on my hard drive. And that is more than 54 years ago. I thought of buying her something as a gift. I thought of many things. I'm not very good at giving gifts. She does all the buying of gifts for the family. And then I decided to marry her instead. She's given me 4 children, and they have given us 14 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. And so when you look at me, I'm a very, very wealthy man. My life is rich with love of both giving and receiving. Thank you. I wouldn't like to ask Jean to come and say hi. It's like any ordinary, they don't know when to stop, so I won't leave it there. No. She doesn't like to talk at all. She leaves it to me. I want to turn your attention to a very well-known passage of Scripture. Hebrews chapter 2, verses 1 to 3. The first word of this second chapter begins with a strange word. Therefore. Therefore we ought to give the more earnest attention to the things which we have heard, lest at any time we should let them slip. For if the word spoken by angels was steadfast, and every transgression and disobedience received a just recompense of the reward, a question we need to answer. How shall we escape if you neglect so great salvation? And you can't neglect something you don't have. You can't neglect something that you do not have any access to. But the question God asks us is, how shall we escape? I'm Afrikaans speaking, so I think in Afrikaans and I speak to you in English, and so sometimes I get stuck up here somewhere. Therefore, we cannot understand the word beginning in a new chapter, or a new chapter, without understanding what does it mean. Because it simply says, for this reason, we need to understand what precedes the word therefore. And so we go back to Hebrews chapter 1, reading from verse number 1. God, who in times past and in different manners spoke to the fathers by the prophets, has in these last days spoken to us by his Son, whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the world. Therefore, he changed the medium of addressing man from the prophets. Now he sends his son. And the challenge to us, since he has changed the medium to his son, therefore, we ought to give them more earnest attention. I know some people, when I preach, I see them scribbling fast, and they look at me from time to time, and I think, well, they're taking down what I'm saying. In effect, they're working out their budget for the end of the month, but they just keep looking at me so I can think that they're with me, but they're not really with me. But I want to say to you, we ought to give them more earnest attention. We should put what we're thinking, and if you're not sure that you put the stove off at home, don't worry about it. I have a fire brigade out there. Less at any time we should let them slip. And so the question we need to ask ourselves this morning is, who is this son who dares make demands on my busy schedule? The schedule of my life. Who is he? Who is the son who challenges the priorities of my life? Who questions me about my recreational time, my privacy? And then he doesn't stop there, he goes into my finance. Who is he? Who does he think he is? And so Hebrews takes time to tell us about the son, why we ought to give more earnest attention. Who is the son? God appointed him heir of all things. He is the heir. And he's going to have the last word about you and I. We may live without him, but we cannot die without him. And the day will come when we will turn to him and he will make the last and have the last pronouncement on your life. He made all the worlds. In the beginning, Genesis chapter 1, God created. There are many people who have the tendency to major on minors. The beginning was 7,000 years ago. And so when science comes and they find bones that go back to 47 million years, they say, trash the Bible. You don't have to trash the Bible. Because the Bible says, in the beginning. It doesn't say when the beginning was. It didn't say the beginning was in 1942 when Colin La Foy was born. No, in the beginning. And so it doesn't matter if somebody comes up with 100 million years of relics. Doesn't matter. Because God was in the beginning. Because your mind starts from yesterday, you think you want to lock the whole world and the whole of creation into yesterday. Absolute poppycock. Now I'm speaking English, ne? Maar ek is Afrikaans sprekend. Who is the Son? Hebrews 1 verse number 3, who being the brightness of his glory. He was the express image of his person, upholding everything by the word of his power. When he by himself purged our sin. Have you ever wondered why space hangs up there? What holds it up there? By the power of his word, he holds everything. Everything. There is nothing that is not under his control. And after he had purged our sin, he sat down at the right hand of the majesty. Yes, God changed the medium of communication and sent his only begotten Son. And he issues us with an ultimatum in his word, which you have to answer. How will you escape if you neglect so great a salvation? Who is the Son? He has created everything. It was he who made the worlds. He laid the foundation, Hebrews 1, verse number 10. He laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the work of his hand. Who is the Son? He is the heir of everything. All things are created by him, and all things consist because of him. His name has become a curse word. What's the tennis player playing? And every time he hit a bad shot, he mentioned the name of Jesus Christ. And an old man got up and walked over to him and touched him on the shoulder. He said, the name that you use as abusively as you do, he saved my soul. And so you quit now. And if you don't quit now, I'll encourage the people who are watching this match to leave. Sometimes we're not big enough to do that, and we allow them to continue the abuse of the name. Who is the Son? Hebrews begins the great comparison of the incomparable one. Who is the Son? Number 1, verse 6 says, he's greater than the angels. The worship of angels have become an acceptable thing even in Christendom. I spent some time in Mexico some years ago and watched them worship angels. But the Son is better than the angels. He has an inheritance, verse 4, and has obtained by inheritance a more excellent name than they. Verse 5, for unto which of the angels said he at any time, thou art my Son, this day have I begotten you. And again, I will be to him a father, and he shall be my son. We may worship apparitions and visions that people saw and remove the emphasis from the Son. Again, when he brings the Son, the first begotten, into the world, he said, let the angels worship him. So you go, when you worship angels, you're worshiping those who worship the Son. Number 2, is greater than the prophets. In times past, God spoke to man and our fathers by the prophet, but now he speaks to us through his Son. 1 Corinthians 13, verse number 8 says, charity never fails, but where there are prophecies, they shall fail. In South Africa today, I'm sure it doesn't happen here. In Australia, in the bush, you kick, 15 prophets fall out. And where they fall, they say, in my mother tongue, hulle praat twak ook, né? They talk rubbish. But people hang on to their lips and believe everything they say. I was in the church one day, one of the churches I built. I was sitting right at the back there, and they brought in this stout lady. Nothing wrong with ladies, and there's nothing wrong with being stout either. And she was a prophet from Cape Town. Introduced, and then she began. When I walked in, there was the only white guy in the church was Frank Blair. She saw him. You know, when you're white in a black church, so you stand out like a sore thumb. Come up here. And she began to prophesy over him. God's going to fix your marriage. I was the only Chinese-looking guy, so I was next. Come here. They lose all decorum, they're rude. So I went to the front. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know that the platform she's standing on, I built that platform with the roof of the church. I put on the roof. And before she could start prophesying of me, I said, whatever you said about that man before me, it's wrong. He's got nothing going for him but his marriage. And you know, God says he's going to fix up. There's nothing to fix up in his marriage. So before you talk to me now and prophesy over the mic, they want to embarrass everybody too, you see. She started to cry in my mother tongue. Say, "Khachang." I was more embarrassed than she was. And whilst you were still crying, I left the platform. I was wrong. God says we must open our mouths and talk. No. He must first give you a word. And some of your dreams is nothing more than late night pizza and indigestion. You say, God spoke to me. No. Quit eating heavy food at night time. You're going to dream many, many dreams. 1 Corinthians 13 verse number 9. We know in part and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect is come, then that which is in part shall be done away with. There will be no necessity for prophesying when all things are perfect. He's greater than Abraham. Listen to Christ in John 8 verse 56. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it. He was glad. The crowd was very angry in verse 57. The Jews said to him, you're not yet 50 years old, and you say you've seen Abraham? Said Christ, before Abraham was, I am. He was before time. He was before creation. He was the creator of everything that is. The crowd was so angry they were determined to stone him. He was greater than Moses, the great champion who passed through one of the most powerful countries, empires of the ancient world. And when Moses left, it never recovered up until today. But he was greater. Christ, the Son, is greater than Moses. Moses verily was faithful in God's house as a servant, for a testimony of those things which were spoken after. But verse 6, but Christ is not a servant, he's a son in the house. And there's a difference. He's greater than Aaron, and by extension he's greater than the Aaronic priesthood. Christ being come and become a high priest of good things to come by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building. He changed the geography. He changed the sacrifice, neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood. He entered once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. If the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of heifers sprinkling the unclean sanctifies to the purifying of the flesh. Goats, heifers. But verse 14 says, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, purge our conscience from dead works. The bulls and the goats, they can purify our flesh, but there is something that we need purged, and to have our conscience purged from dead works, that we may serve a living God. Verse 24. For Christ is not entered into the places made with hands of man, which are but a figure of the truth, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. Verse number 25 of chapter 9. Nor yet that he should offer himself often, annually, as the high priest entered into the holy place every year with the blood of others. Then Christ should often have suffered from the foundation of the world, but now once. Say that. Once. I know you can count more to more than one, but put it this morning, once. Now once. In the end of the world, that he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. The power of the sacrificial blood of Christ. once. The Aaronic priesthood every year, but not Christ. That is why the doctrine of transubstantiation is so wrong. And you go, and now was going to become an Anglican minister. They have a mauve lamp burning, and behind a veil they have yesterday's, last week's bread. And because they, by transubstantiation, magically turn the bread into the body. Now these are emblems. Thank you, Pastor Don, for what you said. These are emblems. It's a remembrance feast. We remember the price which was paid with his own body. We don't let him suffer again and again. Number 5, he is greater than life. In John 19, Pilate asked him, you don't answer me? Do you not know I have power over you to crucify you? I have power to release you. And Jesus answered, you have no power against me except that which was given to you from above. And then he made the statement in verse 17 of chapter 10. For this reason my Father loves me, because I laid down my life. And I might take it up again. No man takes my life from me. I lay it down of my own volition. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it up again. It wasn't taken away from him. He laid it down. Number 6 is greater than death. Now is Christ risen from the dead. Do you know why I'm a Christian? I can go to the tombs of the greatest religious founders of the world, and I want to say that I admire their works, and I'm grateful for the moral codes of ethics they've left to bring sanity to the insanity of man. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not. And I'm grateful to visit their tombs and say, thank you for leaving moral codes of ethics to bring sanity to man. But when I entered into the tomb of Jesus, it stands open. And it is empty. Because on the third day, he rose again from the dead, and he is alive forevermore. And when the resurrection took place, Exodus was made alive. And referred to the feast of first fruits of Exodus. But now is Christ risen from the dead and have become the first fruit of them that slept. And the feast of first fruits, they took the first harvest and they waved it. Must look pretty silly. And little boys ask their dads, why do we do this? Oh, we were instructed to do it. What does it mean? We don't know what it means, but we wave it. The wave offering. And now the Bible relates the resurrection as the feast of first fruit. The first fruits were simply saying, here's the first fruit of the wheat, the corn of wheat. But Lord, look behind us. There's a mighty harvest. There's a harvest coming. And when you compare Christ as an allegory to the first fruit, there's a mighty harvest. Every tomb shall open of those who loved him, and they shall come forth because he is the first fruit of them that slept. Yes, he is greater than death. The greatest fear of man is death. You don't talk about it. You've paid for the hole you're going to be buried in. You paid for the coffin, but you don't want to talk about it. But I want to tell you, to man's greatest fear, he's given us the greatest hope. How shall we escape if we neglect so great salvation? great because of the price was paid. The blood of Christ. Great elevation. I was a nothing. I courted a girl when I was in standard 9. Visited her home, and they set out the china and the tea. And they've got a saying in the hometown where I come, a little town, the Diamond Fields in Kimberley. They ask you, "Wie's pa's jy? Whose father are you?" What they're doing is they're trying to put you into a box. Where do you fit into the scheme of these people who think that their feet don't stink? So I told this gentleman where I came from. He didn't finish his tea, and on his table, I was sitting on his chair. He got up and walked to the bedroom, and he screamed from the bedroom, "That Dacharuka, out of my house, get out!" And I sat there. I should have walked. I'm a terrible fella. I sat there. If he's a man, it's his house, put me out, man! Scream in the bedroom. What kind of man does that? And he abused me from the bedroom. He's a nothing, he's a nobody, and he's going nowhere. And he's going nowhere in reverse gear. He'll never mount to a hill of beans. And I took all of that in when I left his house eventually. I believed that of me. I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody. I'll never accomplish anything. But that was not God's last word. The great elevation. He made me a son of God. He restored my humanity. He restored my dignity. And like the manic of Gadara, who was naked, cutting himself with stones, but now he was sitting clothed and in his right mind. There's no power that can change the mind and can heal the mind of man like the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. The great transformation. I've got 5 more minutes and I've got something more to say. So just sit like in there. I was driving on a public transport one day on a Saturday afternoon, and when we came to a certain place near the Lion Match Factory, the traffic backed up for several kilometers. I couldn't get out of that bus because if I got out of that bus, I didn't have bus fare to pay for another bus, so I sat in this bus going nowhere. And after an hour, I decided to walk up the line of traffic to see what's it. And there was a little skinny woman, fist raised in the air. What is her name, Jean? That's my memory. Shirley. What's his surname? You're ashamed of these people. Don't tell him. Standing in the middle of the road. If there's a man amongst you, take me, move me. Even the police, they stood there. Me, I are people. Vicious woman. Many years later, I walked into an Assemblies of God church and I saw that same Shirley Holmes. You know what I'm talking about? Your relative, nogal now. I saw her standing in the church. Her hands were no longer clenched into a fist. She held her open palms and looking up to heaven. And she was worshipping God. And I thought, God, I was dead scared of this woman. You laugh. It's very wise to be scared of women. You just go sleep with your head next to the pillow. You don't know what they got under the pillow. She's still worshipping God today. There's no power that can change a life that is hopeless. There's nothing that can transform men and women from the accepted course they're on outside of the power, and I stand before you as the evidence of what God can do. I met one of the teachers where I schooled, and I hadn't seen them for maybe 30 years. And she looked at me. Is that you, Colin? That's me. What happened to you? I said, Jesus found me. What? I go to church. I said, I'm not talking about church. Jesus found me. Transformed my life. Made me hope. when I was hopeless. That final verse is Jeremiah 8, verse 22. The sadness of it. Is there no balm in Gilead? The harvest is past, verse 20. The summer is ended, and we are not saved. For the hurt of the daughter of my people, I am hurt. I am black as I am astonished. Astonishment hath taken hold of me. And he cries this cry. No small wonder they called him the weeping prophet. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then is the health of the daughter of my people not recovered? And he closes on that note of hopelessness without an answer. And they carried Negroid slaves from Africa and laid them like silver spoons in the bowels of a ship. Many of them suffocated from their own excrement or the excrement of their labors. They laid like that. 60% of the human cargo was dead on arrival. And those people, wrenched from the bosom of Africa and their family, they found a new hope. And they wrote that Negro spiritual. There is a balm in Gilead that heals the sin-sick soul. There is a balm in Gilead that makes the wounded whole. They found hope in the midst of absolute hopelessness. I don't know where you are this morning. And maybe you're functioning mechanically. You raise your hands mechanically. You say the correct number of hallelujahs per second as it is expected of a Pentecostal. But your candle of hope has been put out. My wife said no stories, but she sits on my left-hand side and she has no idea. She speaks to my deaf ear, so I don't hear nothing, not this ear. And she says this one won't hear either. But there was a great championship of chess players. You must have heard this one in Europe. And one of these great champions was going to play in this tournament. And because he had a few hours spare, he asked if they could direct him in this European city to the art gallery. And he looked at the art, from art to art, read the inscription. And then he came across a work of art which puzzled him. It was a chessboard. And on the one end sat Lucifer with a grin on his face. And on the other end of the chessboard sat a man, broken and forlorn, bowed. His pieces lying next to him. His knights, his bishops. And the inscription, checkmate. Checkmate. And maybe you feel your life has been checkmated. And you've been convinced by the works of darkness that there's no hope for you. No hope for your children, no hope for your marriage, no hope for your economy. There's no hope. And this great champion looked at the work and walked from side to side and stepped back and looked at it again. And now you don't make a noise in those places, ne? And he screamed on top of his voice, "It's not checkmate! It's not checkmate!" And people ran from all over to try to shut him up, pointing to the work of art. It's not checkmate. Can't you see it? And they looked and they couldn't see it. They said, can't you see? The king has one more move. The king has one more move. And when he gave up the ghost on the cross, I know Lucifer cried, checkmate! He never understood that the king had one more move. On the third day, the earth shook and the rocks rent and tore to pieces, and the stone rolled away. Because the king had one more move. And maybe you've given up on your marriage. Maybe you've given up on your drug-addicted children. Maybe you've come to a place where you've allowed the enemy of your soul to tell you that there is no hope. I've got good news for you. The King has one more move. And when he moved, he transformed my life from helpless and hopelessness. And wherever you are, and if you've given up on yourself, the King has not yet given up on you. And the King has one more move. Can we bow our heads in a word of prayer? I don't know where you are, but if you've hit the stone wall of life, of hopelessness, I have good news for you. I am the product of hopelessness, bitterness, and hatred. But because that King moved on my life when there was no move from the world,